The gunshot wound in Logan Quentin's shoulder had stopped bleeding 3 days ago, but the pain still gnawed at him like a wolf at his insides as he rode toward the old hunting cabin he had not visited in nearly 2 years. The Montana Territory stretched endlessly around him in the autumn of 1878, golden grasses bending beneath an iron sky that promised early snow. He needed shelter, rest, and solitude to heal properly before making the longer journey back to his ranch outside of Columbus. The cabin sat nestled in a grove of pine trees at the base of the Beartooth Mountains, a place his father had built decades ago when this land still belonged entirely to the Crow people, before treaties and broken promises had redrawn the maps. Logan dismounted slowly, favoring his injured side, his boots hitting the hard, packed earth with a dull thud. His horse, a sturdy buckskin mare named Copper, huffed and stamped, eager for water and rest. Something felt different as Logan approached the small log structure. Smoke curled from the chimney in a thin gray line against the darkening sky. His hand instinctively moved to the revolver at his hip, though drawing it would be agony with his wound. Someone had taken up residence in his cabin. He moved quietly despite his injury, years of tracking game and surviving range wars having taught him how to move like a shadow. The door stood slightly ajar, warm firelight spilling out into the gathering dusk. Logan pushed it open slowly with his boot, the hinges creaking in protest. A woman stood by the small stone fireplace, stirring something in an iron pot. She turned at the sound, and Logan felt his breath catch despite himself. She was native, likely Crow from the beadwork pattern on her deerskin dress, with long black hair that fell past her waist and eyes that held the depth of midnight skies. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s, with high cheekbones and copper skin that glowed in the firelight. But what struck him most was her complete lack of surprise at his arrival. "You have come," she said simply in English, her voice carrying the musical lilt of someone who had learned the language alongside her native tongue. "I have been waiting for you." Logan stared at her, his hand still resting on his gun. "Waiting for me? Lady, I do not know you, and this is my property." She smiled, a gentle expression that softened her entire face. "Yes, your property. Your father built this place 30 summers ago. He was kind to my grandmother's people." "I am Raven Nightwind. I knew you would come here when you were hurt." "How could you possibly know I was hurt?" Logan's voice came out harder than he intended, but the strangeness of the situation put him on edge. Raven moved away from the pot and gestured to a small pallet she had prepared near the fire. "Please sit. Your shoulder needs tending. I have been preparing medicine for 3 days now since the vision came to me." "Vision?" Logan did not move from the doorway. "Listen, miss. I appreciate that you have not ransacked my cabin, but I do not believe in visions or fortune-telling or whatever this is." "You do not have to believe," Raven said calmly, "but you do need to sit down before you fall down. I can see you swaying from here, and your face has gone the color of ash." Logan wanted to argue, but she was right. The ride had taken more out of him than he cared to admit, and his legs felt increasingly unsteady. He moved carefully into the cabin and eased himself down onto the pallet, biting back a groan as the movement sent fresh pain through his shoulder. Raven knelt beside him with practiced ease, her movements efficient and sure. "May I see the wound?" He hesitated, then began unbuttoning his shirt with his good hand. The fabric had stuck to the injury in places, dried blood acting as an unpleasant adhesive. Raven helped him ease the shirt off, her touch gentle but impersonal, like a healer rather than a stranger invading his space. The bullet had passed clean through the meat of his shoulder, missing bone, but tearing enough tissue to make his left arm nearly useless. He had done his best to clean and bind it, but infection was always a risk, and the angry red skin around the entry wound suggested he had not been entirely successful. Raven examined it with a critical eye, her fingers probing lightly around the edges. Logan winced but did not pull away. "No infection yet, but it was close. You are fortunate. Who shot you?" "Cattle rustlers outside of Billings," Logan said through gritted teeth. "3 of them tried to run off 50 head of my stock. I stopped them, but one got a shot off before he went down." "You killed him?" "No. Winged him in the leg. The sheriff took all 3 into custody." Logan watched her as she stood and moved back to the fire, selecting various pouches and bundles from a collection arranged on the rough wooden table. "You still have not explained how you knew I would be here, or why you have been waiting for me." Raven began crushing dried herbs between her palms, the sharp scent of sage and something else Logan could not identify filling the small space. "3 nights ago, I dreamed of a man with golden hair and eyes like the summer sky. He rode a buckskin horse and carried pain in his shoulder and in his heart. The dream spirits showed me this cabin and told me to come here, that this man needed help that only I could provide." "And you just followed a dream into the wilderness?" Logan could not keep the skepticism from his voice. She glanced at him over her shoulder, her dark eyes meeting his steadily. "My grandmother was a medicine woman. My mother had the gift of sight. I have walked the spirit path since I was a child. When the dreams speak this clearly, I listen." She paused, mixing the crushed herbs with warm water to form a paste. "Besides, I had nowhere else to go." There was something in the way she said those last words that made Logan's next sharp comment die on his lips. He studied her more carefully, noting details he had missed in his initial surprise. Her dress, while well made, showed signs of hard travel and rough living. She was too thin, her cheekbones sharp beneath her skin. The small pack in the corner of the cabin contained everything she owned, which did not appear to be much. "What happened?" he asked more gently. Raven returned to his side with the herbal paste and clean strips of cloth she must have prepared in advance. "My village was on the reservation at Crow Agency. My father died 2 winters ago. My mother followed him last spring. Without them, my uncle decided I should marry a man from another band, a widower much older than me with 3 children and a reputation for cruelty." She began applying the paste to his wound, her touch sure and steady. "I refused. He beat me and said I brought shame to the family, so I left." Logan hissed as the paste hit his raw flesh, but almost immediately a cooling sensation spread through the area, dulling the constant throb of pain. "You have been surviving out here alone for 3 months. I know the old ways of living off the land. My grandmother taught me which plants to eat, how to trap small game, where to find water." She worked in silence for a moment, spreading the paste carefully before beginning to wrap his shoulder with the clean cloth. "But winter is coming, and I knew I could not survive it alone in the wilderness. When the dream came, I saw it as the spirits offering me a path forward, a path that led to my cabin." "Yes." She finished binding his shoulder and sat back on her heels, studying her work with satisfaction. "You will heal cleanly now. The medicine will draw out any poison and help the flesh knit together properly." Logan flexed his shoulder experimentally and was surprised to find the movement, while still painful, was significantly more bearable than it had been moments before. "What did you mean when you said I carried pain in my heart as well as my shoulder?" Raven rose and returned to the pot by the fire, ladling stew into 2 wooden bowls. "That is not for me to ask about unless you wish to speak of it. The spirits showed it to me, but your sorrows are your own." She handed him a bowl, and Logan accepted it, the rich smell of venison and wild onions making his mouth water. He had been living on jerky and hardtack for days. They ate in silence for a while, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the wind beginning to pick up outside, whistling through the pine trees. Finally, Logan spoke. "My wife died 3 years ago. Childbirth. The baby too, a son." The words came out flat, emotionless, the way they always did when he had to speak of it. "Since then, it has just been me and the ranch. My foreman, Tom, runs most of the day-to-day operations now. I keep myself busy, but the place feels empty, too big for one man rattling around in it." Raven nodded slowly, her dark eyes reflecting firelight. "Grief is a hard companion. It does not leave just because we wish it would." "No," Logan agreed. "It does not." They finished their meal, and Raven collected the bowls, cleaning them efficiently in a bucket of water she had drawn from the nearby creek. Logan watched her move about the small cabin with an ease that suggested she had made it home in the short time she had been there. She had swept the floor, organized the few supplies he kept stored here, and generally transformed the dusty hunting cabin into something approaching comfortable. "You cannot stay here through the winter," Logan said abruptly. "It is too isolated, too dangerous." "Even with supplies which you do not have." Raven paused in her cleaning, her back to him. "I know, but I have not yet determined where else to go. Perhaps Fort Benton. I have heard there is work there for those willing to take it." "Fort Benton is 200 miles north, and you would freeze before you made it halfway." Logan shifted on the pallet, trying to find a position that did not aggravate his shoulder. "Besides, a woman traveling alone would attract the wrong kind of attention. It is not safe." "Many things are not safe," Raven said quietly. "But I will not go back to the reservation. I will not marry a man who would treat me as property rather than a person." Logan was quiet for a long moment, wrestling with himself. He was a solitary man by nature, had become even more so after Margaret's death. The idea of bringing a stranger into his home, into his life, went against every instinct he had developed over the past 3 years of self-imposed isolation. But he could not, in good conscience, send this woman out into the wilderness to face the brutal Montana winter alone. "Come back to the ranch with me," he said finally. "I need help around the place anyway. Someone to cook, clean, help with the household tasks. You would have your own room, a warm place to sleep, regular meals. In exchange, you help keep the house running." Raven turned to face him, her expression carefully neutral. "You would take me into your home, a stranger, a native woman." "You saved me from infection, maybe worse," Logan said. "And you are right about the winter. It would kill you out here alone." He met her gaze steadily. "I am not a man who lets debts go unpaid. You helped me, so I help you. Fair trade." Something flickered in her eyes, an emotion he could not quite read. "What about your neighbors? What will they say about a Crow woman living in your house?" Logan's jaw tightened. "They can say whatever they want. It is my land, my house, and my business who I employ." He paused. "Though I suppose we could tell people you are there as a housekeeper if it makes things easier. No need to invite trouble unnecessarily." Raven studied him for a long moment, and Logan had the uncomfortable sensation of being weighed and measured by something far older and wiser than the young woman standing before him. Finally, she nodded. "I accept your offer, Logan Quentin. I will keep your house and help you heal, and perhaps the spirits will reveal why they brought us together. I doubt it was anything more complicated than you needing shelter and me happening to get shot at the right time," Logan said dryly. "But either way, we should rest tonight and head out in the morning. It is 2 days' ride back to the ranch, and we will need to take it slow given my shoulder." Raven gestured to the pallet he was sitting on. "This is yours. I will sleep by the fire. You have been sleeping in here already. I can take the floor. You are injured. You need proper rest for healing." Her tone left no room for argument. "I am accustomed to sleeping wherever I lay my head. It makes no difference to me." Logan wanted to protest further, but exhaustion was pulling at him, made worse by whatever herbs she had put in the paste on his shoulder. They seemed to be spreading a pleasant warmth through his entire body, relaxing muscles he had not even realized were tensed. "Thank you," he said finally. "For the medicine, the food, everything." Raven smiled, that same gentle expression that transformed her face. "You are welcome. Now sleep. Your body needs rest to heal properly." Logan lay back on the pallet, pulling the worn blanket over himself. He watched through heavy-lidded eyes as Raven banked the fire and settled herself on the floor nearby, wrapped in her own thin blanket. Sleep claimed him quickly, pulling him down into darkness unmarred by the nightmares that usually plagued him. The next morning dawned cold and clear, frost glittering on the ground outside the cabin. Logan woke to find his shoulder considerably improved, the constant throb of pain reduced to a dull ache. Raven was already up, preparing a simple breakfast of cornmeal mush and coffee. They ate quickly and prepared to leave. Logan gathered what few supplies the cabin held that might be useful, loading them onto Copper's saddle. Raven packed her meager belongings with practiced efficiency. "We will have to share the horse," Logan said, eyeing Copper doubtfully. "She is strong, but with 2 riders and supplies, we need to take it easy." Raven nodded. "I am light. She will barely notice me." Logan mounted first, biting back a grunt of discomfort as he settled into the saddle. He extended his good arm down to Raven, pulling her up behind him. She settled onto Copper's back with easy grace, her arms wrapping lightly around his waist for balance. The ride back to the ranch was slow but steady. Logan found himself hyper-aware of Raven's presence behind him, the warmth of her body against his back, the way her hair occasionally brushed his neck when the wind caught it. They spoke little, but it was a comfortable silence rather than an awkward one. They camped that first night in a sheltered ravine, sharing Logan's bedroll and blankets for warmth. It was practical, nothing improper about it, but Logan could not deny the strange comfort he felt in having another person near after so long alone. Raven seemed equally at ease, sleeping peacefully while Logan took the first watch, his rifle across his knees as he studied the star-filled sky. The second day brought them down out of the mountains and onto the rolling grasslands where Logan's ranch spread across several thousand acres. The house came into view in the late afternoon, a sturdy 2-story structure of timber and stone that Logan's father had built and that he had expanded when he married Margaret. Barns and outbuildings dotted the property, and Logan could see cattle grazing in the distance, dark shapes against the golden grass. Tom Riley, his foreman, was in the main yard when they rode in. He was a weathered man in his 50s with a gray beard and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes widened considerably when he saw Raven sitting behind Logan. "Boss," Tom said, approaching as Logan dismounted carefully. "We were getting worried. You have been gone longer than expected." His gaze moved to Logan's shoulder, taking in the bindings visible beneath his shirt. "You run into trouble, rustlers near Billings. Nothing I could not handle." Logan reached up to help Raven down from the horse. "Tom, this is Raven Nightwind. She is going to be helping around the house. Raven, this is Tom Riley, my foreman and the man who actually keeps this place running." Tom touched the brim of his hat politely, though Logan could see the questions in his eyes. "Madam, welcome to the Quentin Ranch." "Thank you," Raven said quietly. "I am pleased to meet you." "Get Copper settled, would you?" Logan asked Tom. "I need to show Raven around the house." Tom nodded, taking Copper's reins. "Good to have you back, boss. I will want to hear about those rustlers later." Logan led Raven toward the house, climbing the 3 steps to the wide front porch. He paused at the door, suddenly seeing the place through fresh eyes and feeling unexpectedly self-conscious about it. He pushed the door open and gestured for her to enter. The main room was large and open, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall and windows that let in the afternoon light. Furniture stood arranged in practical groupings, but everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, and the air smelled stale and closed up. Logan had been staying in the foreman's cabin with Tom for the past year, unable to bear the emptiness of the big house. "I have not been living here," he admitted. "Been staying in one of the smaller cabins. The house felt too empty." Raven moved slowly through the space, her fingers trailing over surfaces, her eyes taking in every detail. "It is a good house, strong, built with care." She glanced back at him. "It wants people in it again, life and warmth." Logan cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the observation. "Your room is upstairs. There are 3 bedrooms. The master bedroom is at the end of the hall. You can take either of the other 2. He led her up the wooden staircase, trying not to notice how each step creaked in a way it never had when Margaret was alive, when the house had been full of movement and sound. The first guest room was on the right, a decent-sized space with a bed, dresser, and small washstand. Raven looked inside, then moved to the second room, which was slightly smaller but had a better view of the mountains. "This one," she said firmly, "if that is acceptable, whatever you prefer." Logan hesitated in the doorway. "There are linens in the chest in the hall. I will have Tom bring up water for washing. Are you hungry? There is not much in the kitchen right now, but I have supplies in the storehouse." Raven turned to face him, and again he was struck by the directness of her gaze. "I will need to see what you have for cooking. Tomorrow I can begin properly. Tonight, something simple will suffice." They spent the rest of the afternoon settling in. Logan moved his own belongings back into the master bedroom, a process that stirred up memories and dust in equal measure. He found himself standing in the middle of the room, holding one of Margaret's dresses that still hung in the wardrobe, feeling the weight of grief settle on him like a physical thing. A soft knock on the door frame made him turn. Raven stood there, her expression gentle but not pitying. "Shall I pack these away for you? Sometimes holding on to everything makes it harder to heal." Logan looked down at the dress in his hands. It was blue calico, Margaret's favorite. She had worn it to church every Sunday, had been buried in a different dress so he could keep this one. For what purpose, he could not say. "Yes," he said finally, his voice rough. "Yes, please. There are trunks in the attic. You can store them there." Raven moved into the room and took the dress from him gently. "I will take care of it. Why do not you see about getting us some food? I think we could both use a good meal." Logan nodded, grateful for the excuse to leave. He went downstairs and out to the storehouse, gathering supplies by rote, his mind elsewhere. When he returned to the kitchen, he found Raven had already located the cookware and was examining the stove with an appraising eye. "This is a good stove," she said. "Much finer than anything we had at the agency." Logan set the supplies on the counter. Margaret insisted on it. She loved to bake, and she said if she was going to spend hours in the kitchen, she wanted a proper stove to work with. Raven began sorting through the supplies, her movements efficient and practiced. "She sounds like she was a wise woman." She was. Logan leaned against the counter watching her work. "She was kind, too. Would have liked you, I think. She always said people were more alike than different, that we should judge by character rather than circumstance." "Then I am sorry I did not have the chance to know her." Raven glanced at him. "You should rest. Your shoulder needs more attention, and I can handle the cooking." Logan wanted to argue to prove that he was fine, but the day had taken more out of him than he cared to admit. He retreated to the main room and settled into one of the chairs by the cold fireplace, his shoulder throbbing in time with his heartbeat. He must have dozed off because the next thing he knew, Raven was touching his good shoulder gently, calling his name. "Logan, come eat." The kitchen table was set with 2 plates of beans and salt pork, along with fresh bread that Raven must have found in the supplies. It was simple fare, but it smelled wonderful, and Logan's stomach reminded him that they had eaten little during the day. They ate together in comfortable silence, and afterward, Raven insisted on checking his wound. The paste had done its work, and the inflammation had gone down considerably. She applied fresh medicine and new bindings, her touch as sure and gentle as before. "You heal quickly," she observed. "That is good, but no heavy lifting for at least another week." "I will have Tom handle anything requiring strength," Logan promised, "though I cannot just sit around doing nothing." "There is much work that does not require heavy lifting," Raven pointed out. "Books to balance, plans to make, decisions to render. A ranch does not run on muscle alone." Over the following days, they fell into an unexpected rhythm. Raven proved to be an excellent housekeeper, bringing order and cleanliness back to the house with quiet efficiency. She cooked meals that were simple but flavorful, filled the house with the sense of baking bread and simmering stews. She tended the small kitchen garden that had been lying fallow, preparing it for the coming spring. Logan found himself looking forward to mealtimes, to the conversation that flowed more easily with each passing day. Raven spoke of her childhood, of learning medicine from her grandmother, of the old stories and legends of her people. Logan shared memories of building the ranch with his father, of the early struggles and eventual successes. Tom and the other ranch hands accepted Raven's presence with varying degrees of ease. Most were professional and polite, though Logan noticed that some of the younger men found excuses to come by the house more often than necessary. Raven handled all attention with the same calm grace, neither encouraging nor discouraging, simply existing in her own space. 2 weeks after their arrival, Logan woke before dawn to the smell of fresh coffee and something baking. He dressed and went downstairs to find Raven pulling a pan of cinnamon rolls from the oven, the kitchen already warm and welcoming despite the cold outside. "You have been busy," he said, accepting the cup of coffee she handed him. "It is Sunday," she said. "I thought something special for breakfast would be nice." Logan had lost track of the days, had stopped marking Sundays as anything special after Margaret died. But Raven was right, and he found himself appreciating the gesture more than he could easily express. They ate breakfast together as the sun rose, painting the mountains pink and gold. Raven had placed a vase of dried wildflowers on the table, a small touch that somehow made the whole room feel more alive. "I have been thinking," Logan said, setting down his coffee cup. "Winter is coming on hard, and there is work that needs doing before the first real snow. I could use help inventorying the supplies, making sure we have enough feed for the stock, that sort of thing. Would you be willing to assist with that?" Raven nodded. "Of course. It is what I am here for." "It is more than housekeeping work," Logan said. "I would pay you additional wages for it." She tilted her head, studying him. "You already provide me with shelter, food, and safety. That is payment enough." "It is not," Logan said firmly. "You work hard and you should be compensated fairly, I insist." Something flickered in her eyes, an emotion he was learning to recognize as pleasure, though she kept it carefully controlled. "Then I accept your generous offer." They spent that day going through the storehouses and barns, taking careful inventory of supplies. Logan found himself watching Raven as she moved through the tasks, noting how she seemed to brighten when given problems to solve. how her mind worked through logistics with impressive efficiency. That evening, they sat together in the main room, Logan working on the ranch books while Raven mended some of his shirts by lamplight. It was a peaceful, domestic scene, and Logan felt something in his chest loosen, a tightness he had carried for so long that he had forgotten it was there. "Can I ask you something?" Raven's voice broke the comfortable silence. "Of course. Why have you not remarried? You are still young, not yet 30 summers. You could have a family again if you wished." Logan set down his pen, considering the question. "I am 28. And I suppose I have not thought much about it. Margaret and we were childhood friends, married young. I cannot imagine finding that again, and it seems disrespectful somehow to try." Raven was quiet for a moment, her needle moving through fabric with practiced precision. "My grandmother used to say that love is not a finite resource. Loving someone new does not diminish what you felt before. It just means your heart has more room than you thought." "And what do you think?" Logan asked. She glanced up at him, her dark eyes reflecting the lamplight. "I think grief can become comfortable if we let it, easier than risking new pain. But I also think we are not meant to live our lives alone." "You have not married," Logan pointed out. "No, but I have not closed my heart to the possibility either." She returned her attention to the mending. "When the spirits bring me the right person, I will know." Logan thought about that conversation long after they had retired for the night. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, and realized that, for the first time since Margaret's death, he could think about the future without feeling crushed by the weight of his loss. The weeks passed, and the first real snow came, blanketing the ranch in white. Logan and his men worked hard to ensure the cattle had access to shelter and feed. Raven helped where she could, surprising everyone with her ability to handle horses and her fearlessness in harsh weather. One evening in early December, Logan came in from a long day of checking fence lines to find the house transformed. Raven had decorated with pine boughs and berries, filling the rooms with the scent of evergreen. A fire crackled in the fireplace, and something wonderful was cooking in the kitchen. "What is all this?" he asked, pulling off his snow-covered coat. Raven emerged from the kitchen, a hint of shyness in her expression. "You have been working so hard, and Christmas is coming. I thought you might enjoy some celebration." Logan felt something catch in his throat. He had not celebrated Christmas since Margaret died, had done his best to ignore the holiday entirely. But looking at the warmth and care Raven had put into decorating, he found he could not dismiss it. "Thank you," he said quietly. "It looks wonderful." Over dinner that night, Logan found himself telling Raven stories of Christmases past, of his childhood and later years with Margaret. Raven listened attentively, asking questions and sharing her own memories of winter celebrations in her village. "We would have storytelling circles," she said, her eyes distant with memory. "The elders would tell the old tales and we would dance and sing. The children would receive small gifts, usually something practical but decorated to make it special." "Do you miss it?" Logan asked. "Your village, your people," Raven considered the question carefully. "I miss some of it, the sense of community, the shared traditions. But I do not miss feeling trapped, being told who I must be and what I must do. Here, I have freedom to choose my own path, even if that path is uncertain." Logan reached across the table, covering her hand with his before he could second-guess the impulse. "Your path does not have to be uncertain. You have a place here, Raven, for as long as you want it." She looked down at his hand covering hers, then back up to meet his eyes. "Thank you, Logan. That means more than you know." They sat like that for a long moment, the fire crackling and the wind howling outside, the warmth of the house a cocoon around them. Logan realized with startling clarity that somewhere along the way, Raven had become essential to his life, that he could not imagine the house without her in it, could not imagine his days without her quiet presence and gentle wisdom. Christmas came, and Logan gave Raven a beautiful wool cloak he had Tom pick up on a supply run to Columbus, deep blue with silver fastenings. Her face lit up when she opened the package, and she immediately wrapped it around her shoulders, spinning like a child to make it swirl around her. "It is beautiful," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I have never owned anything so fine." "You deserve fine things," Logan said. "You have brought life back to this house, back to me. It is a small token of my appreciation." Raven disappeared upstairs and returned a moment later with a package wrapped in plain brown paper. "I made this for you. It is not much, but I hoped you might find it useful." Logan opened it to find a shirt made of soft deerskin, decorated with intricate beadwork across the shoulders and chest. The pattern incorporated both native designs and what he recognized as symbols of ranching life. Horses and cattle worked seamlessly into the traditional geometric patterns. "Raven, this is incredible," he breathed, running his fingers over the detailed work. "You made this," she nodded. "I have been working on it in the evenings when you were with the books. I wanted to give you something that honored both your world and mine." Logan looked up from the shirt to meet her eyes, and something passed between them, a recognition that shifted the ground beneath their feet. "It is perfect," he said softly. "Thank you." That night they sat together by the fire, closer than usual, shoulders nearly touching. The wind howled outside, but inside the house was warm and bright. Logan found his hand seeking hers, their fingers interlacing with a rightness that felt inevitable. "I have been thinking about what you said," Logan began, his voice low, "about hearts having more room than we think." Raven turned to face him, her expression open and waiting. And I think you might be right." He squeezed her hand gently. "These past months, you have become so important to me. I find myself thinking about you constantly, looking forward to seeing you each morning, reluctant to say goodnight each evening." "Logan," she whispered, his name a prayer on her lips. "I know this is complicated," he continued. "I know people will talk, will judge, but I do not care. Not anymore. I care about you, Raven, more than I thought I could care about anyone again." She reached up with her free hand, cupping his face gently. "I have cared for you since before we met, since the spirits showed me your face in my dreams. I thought perhaps it was just the connection of healer and patient, but it has grown into something deeper, something that fills my heart until I think it might burst." Logan turned his face into her palm, pressing a kiss there. "I cannot promise it will be easy. There will be those who object, who make trouble." "I have faced trouble before," Raven said firmly. "I am not afraid of it, not if it means being with you." Logan drew her closer, his good arm wrapping around her waist. "Then let me court you properly. Let me do this right." Raven smiled, that beautiful expression that transformed her entire face. "Yes, I would like that very much." He kissed her then, softly at first, a gentle exploration. She responded with equal tenderness, her arms wrapping around his neck as the kiss deepened. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, foreheads resting together. "I should probably go to my room now," Raven said reluctantly. "Before I forget all propriety." Logan chuckled. "Probably wise. But tomorrow and all the days after we figure out what this means together." "Agreed." "Agreed." They stood, still holding hands, neither wanting to break the connection. Finally, Raven rose on her toes to kiss him once more, quick and sweet, before disappearing up the stairs. Logan watched her go, his heart fuller than it had been in years. The winter passed in a blur of work and stolen moments. Logan courted Raven with all the attention and care he could muster. He brought her small gifts, wildflowers preserved in glycerin, a set of hair combs made of polished bone, a book of poetry he thought she might enjoy. They spent evenings reading together, Logan discovering that Raven had an excellent education, taught by missionaries at the reservation school despite the often harsh conditions there. Tom was the first to figure out the change in their relationship, though he said nothing directly. Logan caught him watching them sometimes, a small smile on his weathered face, and knew his friend approved. Not everyone was so accepting. When word spread to the neighboring ranches that Logan Quentin was keeping company with a native woman, there was talk. Some of it was merely gossip, but some carried a harder edge, a disapproval rooted in prejudice. Logan faced it head-on, making it clear to anyone who would listen that Raven was an honored member of his household, and that anyone who disrespected her was not welcome on his land. He lost some acquaintances over it, but he found he did not care. The people who mattered, who truly knew him, accepted his choice. In early March, as the snow began to melt and the first signs of spring appeared, Logan took Raven on a ride up into the foothills. He had packed a picnic and they ate lunch overlooking the valley, the ranch spread out below them like a patchwork quilt. "It is beautiful up here," Raven said, her face turned up to the sun. "I can see why you love this land so much." "I do love it," Logan agreed. "My father spent his whole life building this place, and I have spent mine maintaining and growing it. But lately I have realized something." "What is that?" "The land is important, but it is not everything. A place is just a place without people to share it with, without love to make it home." He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Raven Nightwind, you have brought joy and light back into my life. You have healed wounds I did not even know how to name. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you how much." Raven's eyes were shining, tears gathering at the corners. "Logan." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, simple but beautiful, a silver band with a small turquoise stone. "This was my mother's. My father gave it to her when they were married. I know people will talk, will judge, but I do not care. I want you to be my wife if you will have me." Raven looked down at the ring, then back up at him, tears now flowing freely down her face. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Logan slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as though it had been made for her. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply, the promise of forever in that kiss. They were married in early April in a simple ceremony in Columbus, with Tom Riley and his wife standing as witnesses. The preacher had been skeptical at first, but was won over by the obvious devotion between Logan and Raven. Some townspeople attended, curious or supportive in equal measure, while others stayed away in silent protest. Logan and Raven did not care. They exchanged their vows in front of God and the people who mattered, promising to love and cherish each other for all their days. Raven wore a dress of cream-colored silk that Logan had commissioned from a seamstress in Billings, with beadwork that honored her heritage incorporated into the design. Logan wore the deerskin shirt she had made him, proud to display the symbol of their joined worlds. The ranch hands threw them a celebration when they returned home, with music and dancing that lasted late into the night. Logan danced with his bride under the stars, holding her close and marveling at how his life had transformed. That night, they came together as husband and wife in the master bedroom Logan had once shared with Margaret. There was no awkwardness, no sense of betrayal. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, two people who had found each other against all odds, expressing their love in the most intimate way possible. The days and weeks that followed were some of the happiest Logan had ever known. He and Raven worked side by side, partners in every sense of the word, She had a good head for business and often offered insights that improved operations. The ranch thrived under their combined management. Not everything was easy. There were those in the community who continued to disapprove, who made their feelings known through cold shoulders and whispered comments. One particularly ugly incident occurred in late summer when a neighboring rancher, Silas Morton, confronted Logan in Columbus. "You are a disgrace to white society," Morton spat, his face red with anger and whiskey. "Marrying a savage, bringing her into a Christian home, your father would be ashamed." Logan's fist connected with Morton's jaw before he could think better of it, sending the larger man sprawling into the dusty street. "You do not get to speak about my wife or my father," Logan said coldly. "And if you ever insult Raven again, a punch will be the least of your worries." Morton scrambled to his feet, his hand moving toward his gun, but the sheriff stepped between them, a hand on each man's chest. "Enough. Morton, go sleep it off. Logan, get out of here before this turns into something neither of you can take back." Logan nodded curtly and turned to leave, his knuckles throbbing but his anger still hot. He found Raven waiting by the wagon, her face carefully composed though he could see the worry in her eyes. "I heard," she said quietly as he helped her up onto the seat. "You did not have to defend my honor." "Yes, I did," Logan said firmly, climbing up beside her and taking the reins. "You are my wife, and I will not stand by while people speak of you with such disrespect." Raven leaned against his shoulder as they drove out of town. "I knew there would be difficulty. Some people cannot see past the color of skin or the traditions of birth." "Then they are fools," Logan said. "And I pity them for missing out on knowing someone as remarkable as you." Raven smiled against his shoulder. "I love you, Logan Quentin. I love you too, Raven Quentin." By the time autumn arrived, Raven suspected she was with child. She waited until she was certain before telling Logan, nervous despite their strong relationship. She found him in the barn one evening, checking on a mare about to foal. "Logan, I need to talk to you about something." He looked up from the stall, immediately picking up on her serious tone. "What is wrong? Are you all right?" "I am fine. Better than fine, actually." She moved closer, taking his hands in hers. "I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." Logan's eyes went wide, his face cycling through a series of emotions too quick to name. Finally, he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "Truly, truly. I am about 2 months along, I think. The baby should come in the spring." Logan pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands, his eyes searching hers. "And you are happy about this? I know after Margaret the thought of childbirth." "I am happy," Raven said firmly, "and I am not afraid. My grandmother taught me much about birthing. I will be careful, and we will have help when the time comes." Logan kissed her deeply, then dropped to his knees, pressing his ear against her still flat stomach. "Hello, little one. I am your father, and I promise I am going to do everything in my power to keep you and your mother safe." Tears streamed down Raven's face as she ran her fingers through his hair. "We are going to be fine, Logan, all of us." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the winter. Raven remained healthy and active, though Logan fussed over her constantly, trying to prevent her from doing anything he deemed too strenuous. She tolerated his worry with patient amusement, understanding that his fear came from love and loss. In February, Raven invited her cousin, a woman named Mourning Dove who was also skilled in midwifery, to come stay at the ranch for the last month of the pregnancy. Mourning Dove was a calm, practical woman in her 30s who had delivered dozens of babies. Her presence eased Logan's fears considerably. When the labor pains began on a warm April morning, Logan felt his control slipping. He paced the main room downstairs while Mourning Dove and Tom's wife, Sarah, attended to Raven upstairs. The hours crawled by, each cry from above sending fresh terror through his heart. Tom sat with him, a steadying presence. "She is strong, Logan, and Morning Dove knows what she is doing." "So did the doctor who attended Margaret," Logan said roughly. "It did not matter. Every birth is different. You have to have faith." Finally, after what felt like an eternity but was probably 6 hours, he heard it, the thin wail of a newborn baby. Logan was on his feet and halfway up the stairs before Morning Dove appeared at the top, a tired but genuine smile on her face. "Come meet your son," she said. Logan took the stairs 2 at a time. He burst into the bedroom to find Raven propped up against pillows, exhausted but glowing, a tiny bundle cradled in her arms. She looked up as he entered, her smile brighter than the sun. "Logan, come meet your son." He moved to the bed on shaky legs, looking down at the tiny face peeking out from the blankets. The baby had a shock of dark hair and skin that was somewhere between his pale tone and Raven's copper. As Logan watched, the baby opened his eyes, revealing dark blue irises that would likely change color in time. "He is perfect," Logan breathed. "You are both perfect." He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, and Raven transferred the baby into his arms. Logan held his son, feeling the light weight of him, marveling at the tiny fingers and toes. Grief and joy warred in his chest, the memory of his lost son mixing with the reality of this living, breathing child. "I was thinking we could name him Samuel," Raven said softly. "After your father." Logan looked up at her, eyes bright with unshed tears. "You would do that. He should know where he comes from, both sides of his heritage. Samuel Quentin honors your family, and we can give him a Crow name as well when the time is right." "Samuel," Logan repeated, testing the name. The baby made a small sound, and Logan smiled. "I think he approves." The days that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. Logan threw himself into fatherhood with the same dedication he brought to everything, learning how to change diapers, comfort a crying infant, and support his exhausted wife. Raven handled motherhood with her characteristic grace, though she also struggled with the lack of sleep and the constant demands of a newborn. They supported each other through it, trading off night feedings, napping when the baby napped, learning together how to be parents. Tom and Sarah helped when they could, and Morning Dove stayed for 2 weeks after the birth to ensure both mother and baby were thriving. As spring turned to summer, Samuel grew from a tiny newborn into a robust infant with a ready smile and an impressive set of lungs. He had Logan's eyes, which had settled into a clear blue-gray, and Raven's coloring and features. He was a beautiful child, and Logan found himself constantly amazed by him. One evening in late June, Logan sat on the porch with Samuel sleeping against his chest, watching the sun set over the mountains. Raven came out and settled beside him, her head on his shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How much has changed in the past 1.5 years," Logan said. "When I rode up to that cabin, I was alone and injured, just going through the motions of living. Now I have you and Samuel, and a future I actually want to be part of." Raven lifted her head to look at him. "The spirits knew what they were doing when they sent me that dream. They knew we needed each other." "I used to dismiss such things as superstition," Logan admitted. "But I cannot deny that something brought us together, call it spirits or fate or divine providence. Whatever it was, I am grateful for it every single day." Samuel stirred against his chest, making small baby sounds in his sleep. Logan rubbed his back gently, the gesture already second nature. "I want more of this," Raven said softly. "More children, more life, more love. I want to fill this house with joy the way it was meant to be filled." Logan kissed the top of her head. "Then that is exactly what we will do. However many children you want, However much life you want to build, I am with you every step of the way." The years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. Samuel grew into a bright, energetic toddler who loved horses and following his father around the ranch. When he was 2, Raven gave birth to their daughter, Emily, a tiny, delicate baby with her mother's dark eyes and her father's golden hair. 2 years after that came another son, Thomas, named after Tom Riley, who had become like family to them. The ranch prospered under Logan and Raven's management. They expanded operations, adding more land and cattle, building new structures and improvements. Raven's business acumen proved invaluable, and many of the ranch's most successful ventures came from her suggestions. The community's attitude toward their family evolved slowly. Some people never came around, clinging to their prejudices and disapproval. But others, seeing the happiness and success of the Quentin family, began to soften. The children, with their mixed heritage and obvious joy in life, won over many hearts that might have remained closed to their parents. Samuel, Emily, and Thomas grew up knowing they were loved, knowing they belonged to 2 worlds and should be proud of both. Raven taught them the stories and traditions of her people, while Logan ensured they understood their pioneer heritage as well. They were raised to be strong, kind, and open-minded, to judge people by their character rather than their appearance. When Samuel was 10, Emily 8, and Thomas 6, Mourning Dove came to visit with news. She had married a man from her band and was expecting her first child. She stayed with them for a week, and Logan was touched by how much joy Raven took in spending time with her cousin, the 2 women talking late into the night about family and life. On the last evening of her visit, they all gathered on the porch, the children playing in the yard while the adults watched the sunset. Logan had his arm around Raven's shoulders, her head resting against him in their familiar pose. "You have built something special here," Mourning Dove said, watching the children. "Not just a successful ranch, but a family that honors both its roots. That is not an easy thing to do." "It has not always been easy," Raven agreed, "but it has always been worth it." Logan thought about that as he watched his children play, Samuel helping Emily climb a tree while Thomas cheered them on. He thought about the lonely, grief-stricken man he had been, riding up to that cabin with a bullet wound in his shoulder and a wound in his heart that seemed like it would never heal. He thought about Raven standing by the fire, turning to him with those knowing eyes, saying she had been waiting for him. At the time, he had thought it impossible, even absurd, but she had been right. She had been waiting and he had been searching without even knowing it. "Do you ever regret it?" Logan asked Raven quietly after Mourning Dove had gone inside and the children had been put to bed. "Leaving your people, facing all the difficulty, all the judgment." Raven turned to face him, the moonlight illuminating her face. She was in her 30s now, a few lines at the corners of her eyes, but still as beautiful as the day he had first seen her. "How could I regret the path that led me to you, to our children, to this life we have built? We have faced challenges, yes, but we have faced them together. That makes all the difference." Logan pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her, sage and wood smoke and something uniquely her own. "I love you, Raven Quentin, more than I ever thought I could love anyone. And I love you, Logan Quentin. From the first moment the spirits showed me your face, I think I was already falling in love with you." They sat together in the darkness, the sounds of the Montana night around them, the ranch settled and peaceful. Inside, their children slept safely, and the house that had once been so empty was now filled with life and warmth and love. 10 more years passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. Samuel grew into a responsible young man of 20, already taking on more of the ranch management and showing every sign of being an excellent rancher. Emily, at 18, was beautiful and fierce, with her mother's wisdom and her father's determination. She had announced her intention to study medicine, inspired by her mother's healing knowledge and wanting to bridge the gap between traditional and modern medical practices. Thomas, at 16, was quieter than his siblings, but showed a gift with horses that rivaled his father's. Raven and Logan watched their children grow with pride and occasional bittersweet awareness of time's passage. They were in their 40s now, both showing signs of age but still healthy and active. The ranch had grown into one of the most successful operations in the territory, a testament to their hard work and partnership. One evening in late summer, the entire family gathered for dinner, a tradition they maintained despite increasingly busy schedules. The conversation was lively, full of debate and laughter. Samuel was discussing plans for expanding into horse breeding, while Emily argued passionately about the need for better medical facilities in Columbus. Thomas listened quietly, occasionally adding a thoughtful comment. After the meal, as the children cleaned up, Logan took Raven's hand and led her outside. They walked to a small hilltop overlooking the ranch, a place they had come to over the years when they needed to talk or simply be together. "We have done well, have we not?" Logan said, looking out over the land they had built together. "We have done better than well," Raven replied. "We have created something that will outlast us, a legacy of love and hard work and bridging divides." Logan turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night in the cabin? That you had been waiting for me?" "I remember every moment of that night," Raven said softly. "I was so nervous, this strange white man appearing exactly as the spirits had shown me. I had to trust that the vision was true." "I am glad you did. I am glad you trusted your vision, trusted yourself, trusted me even when I gave you little reason to." Logan raised her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "You saved my life that day, Raven, not just my body but my spirit. I was dead inside, just going through the motions. You brought me back to life." Tears glistened in Raven's eyes. "And you gave me a home when I had nowhere else to go. You gave me love, respect, partnership. You gave me children and a life I never dared dream was possible." They held each other as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple and red. Behind them, they could hear their children's voices raised in laughter over something, the sound filling the evening air with joy. "We should go back," Raven said eventually. "Before they wonder where we have gone. In a moment." Logan tightened his arms around her. "I just want to hold you a little longer to remember this moment when everything is perfect." "Every moment with you is perfect," Raven said, then laughed at herself. "Listen to me, getting sentimental in my old age. You are not old. You are seasoned like fine leather or good whiskey." Raven laughed harder at that. "You certainly know how to flatter a woman, comparing her to leather and whiskey." Logan grinned, the expression making him look years younger. "You know what I mean. We have lived, loved, struggled, succeeded. We have earned every line on our faces and every gray hair on our heads." They walked back to the house hand in hand, comfortable in the silence that came from decades of understanding each other. Inside, they found Samuel showing Thomas something on a map, while Emily read aloud from a medical journal, pausing occasionally to share particularly interesting passages. This was their legacy, Logan thought. Not just the land or the cattle or the successful ranch, but these three remarkable people they had raised together, who carried both their heritages with pride and were making their own paths in the world. Over the next several years, they watched as their children became adults with their own lives. Samuel married a schoolteacher from Billings, a bright, kind woman named Catherine who fit seamlessly into the family. They gave Logan and Raven their first grandchild, a boy named Logan Samuel, called Sam to avoid confusion. Emily went east to study medicine, returning 3 years later as Dr. Emily Quentin, ready to open a practice that honored both traditional and modern healing methods. She married a fellow doctor, a man who respected her knowledge and supported her unconventional approaches. Thomas eventually married the daughter of a neighboring rancher, resolving a long-standing property dispute in the process and uniting two of the largest ranches in the region. He and his wife, Margaret, named after Logan's first wife in a gesture that touched Logan deeply, settled into managing the western portion of the now extensive Quentin holdings. Logan and Raven gradually handed over more responsibility to Samuel and Thomas, though they remained active in ranch operations well into their 60s. They spent more time with their growing number of grandchildren, passing on stories and wisdom, teaching skills and values. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Logan arranged a surprise for Raven. He took her back to the old hunting cabin where they had first met, restored now and maintained as a retreat. Inside, he had arranged for a romantic dinner, with flowers and candles and all the romance he could muster. "Logan, this is beautiful," Raven said, her eyes shining as she looked around. "But you did not have to go to such trouble." "Of course I did. 20 years ago, you changed my life in this very cabin. I wanted to mark the anniversary properly." They ate and talked, reminiscing about the years they had shared. Logan gave her a beautiful necklace with a large turquoise stone that matched her wedding ring, while Raven presented him with a new shirt she had made, still decorated with the intricate beadwork that had become her signature. "I still remember standing by that fire," Raven said, gesturing to the fireplace, "and turning to see you in the doorway, wounded and suspicious and exactly like my dream. I was terrified you would send me away." "I almost did," Logan admitted. "I was so closed off, so determined to handle everything alone. Thank God you were stubborn enough not to give up on me. The spirits do not send visions lightly. I knew I had to trust, even when it was difficult." Logan moved to kneel before her chair, taking her hands in his. "Raven Quentin, you are my heart, my partner, my best friend. These 20 years have been the greatest blessing of my life. I look forward to 20 more and 20 after that, for as long as we are granted." "Growing old with you has been my greatest joy," Raven said, cupping his face in her hands. "I love you, Logan, now and always." They spent the night at the cabin, lying together in the small bed, holding each other and watching the fire burn down to embers. It was peaceful and perfect, a celebration of all they had built together. The years continued to pass. Logan and Raven moved more slowly now, their bodies showing the wear of decades of hard work, but their minds remained sharp and their love remained strong. They spent their days working in the garden Raven had expanded considerably, playing with grandchildren, and simply enjoying each other's company. On a warm evening in late June, when Logan was 72 and Raven 67, they sat together on the porch as they had countless times before. The ranch bustled with activity, 3 generations of Quentins now living and working on the land. Samuel's children were teenagers now, showing the same dedication to the ranch their father had. Emily's practice was thriving, serving both the white community and the nearby Crow reservation without discrimination. Thomas and Margaret had 4 children and were respected leaders in the ranching community. "We have been blessed," Raven said quietly, her hand in Logan's. "More than I ever imagined possible. We have indeed." Logan squeezed her hand gently. His joints ached more these days and he tired more easily, but he had no complaints. He had lived a full life, richer than he had any right to expect. You remember what I told you that first night?" Raven asked. "About being shown your face in my dreams. I remember thinking you were crazy," Logan said with a soft laugh. "Or I was for letting you stay." The spirits knew what they were doing. They saw two lonely souls who needed each other, who could heal each other and build something beautiful together. Raven turned to look at him, her face lined with age but her eyes still bright and knowing. "I would do it all again, every moment, every challenge, every joy." "As would I." Logan lifted her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Raven. You took a broken man and helped him become whole again." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Around them, they could hear their family, their legacy, going about the business of life. Inside, someone started playing the piano Emily had insisted they get, the music drifting out through the open windows. "This is what I dreamed of," Raven said softly. "Not just survival, but belonging. Not just shelter, but home. Not just companionship, but love. And you have all of that, as do I." Logan pulled her closer, his arm around her shoulders in the gesture that had become their signature over the decades. "Whatever time we have left, we will spend it together, surrounded by the family and the life we built." As darkness fell and the stars began to appear, one by one, Logan and Raven remained on the porch, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had loved each other through all challenges, who had built a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. The lonely rancher who had ridden up to that cabin all those years ago, wounded and grieving, was a distant memory. In his place was a man surrounded by love, fulfilled by purpose, at peace with his past and content with his present. And beside him sat the woman who had waited for him, who had seen him in a dream and trusted enough to follow that vision into an uncertain future. Together, they had created something extraordinary. Not just a successful ranch or a large family, but a bridge between two worlds, a testament to the power of love to overcome prejudice and hardship. Their children and grandchildren carried both heritages with pride, honoring the traditions of both cultures while forging their own paths. As they finally rose to go inside, moving slowly but still hand in hand, Logan looked back over his shoulder at the land stretched out before them. His land, their land, soon to be his children's land and his grandchildren's after that. It was a legacy worth leaving, built on love and hard work and the courage to choose connection over isolation. Inside, the family had gathered in the main room, children playing while adults talked and laughed. Samuel looked up as his parents entered, his face breaking into a warm smile. "There you are. We were about to send out a search party." "Just watching the sunset," Logan said. "Your mother and I were reminiscing." "About what?" Emily asked, settling her youngest child on her hip. Raven smiled, her eyes finding Logan's. "About the first night we met, and how far we have come since then." "Tell us the story again," one of the grandchildren called out. "About how grandmother was waiting in the cabin for grandfather." Logan and Raven settled into their chairs by the fireplace, and Logan began the tale he had told many times over the years, the story of a lonely rancher who found a woman living in his cabin, a woman who said she had been waiting for him. He told of skepticism turning to friendship, friendship to love, and love to the family gathered around them now. The children listened, enraptured as always, even those who had heard the story dozens of times. It was a tale of magic and practicality, of visions and hard work, of two people from different worlds finding common ground and building something beautiful together. As Logan finished the story, Raven added her own ending, as she always did. "The spirits knew what they were doing when they sent me that dream. They knew that sometimes, The most important journeys begin with trust, and the greatest loves come when we least expect them but need them most. The family settled in for the evening, the house filled with warmth and light and love. Outside, the Montana night deepened, stars wheeling overhead in their ancient patterns. The ranch lay quiet, ready for another day of work and life when the sun rose again. Logan and Raven eventually retired to their room, preparing for bed with the comfortable routine of decades together. As they lay down, Raven curled against Logan's side, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. They felt the profound contentment of a life well lived. "Thank you," Logan whispered into the darkness. "For what? For waiting for me. For trusting your vision. For choosing to stay even when it would have been easier to leave. For loving me and building this life with me." Raven lifted her head to kiss him softly. "Thank you for finding me, for giving me a home, for respecting me and partnering with me, for giving me children and grandchildren and a legacy beyond anything I dreamed possible." They held each other in the darkness, two hearts beating in harmony, two lives so thoroughly intertwined that it was impossible to say where one ended and the other began. Outside, an owl called, and somewhere in the distance cattle lowed. The sounds of the ranch, their ranch, the life they had built together. As they drifted off to sleep, comfortable and content, Logan's last thought was of that autumn day so many years ago when he had ridden up to the cabin, wounded and alone. He thought of Raven turning from the fire, her eyes knowing and calm, saying words that had seemed impossible at the time but had proven to be prophetic. She had been waiting for him, and he had needed her more than he had ever known. Together, they had healed each other, loved each other, and built a legacy that would endure. It was more than enough. It was everything. And in the morning, they would wake together as they had for decades, ready for another day of life and love and family. Ready for whatever came next, knowing that as long as they faced it together, they could handle anything. The lonely rancher had found his home, and the woman who had waited had found her forever. It was a love story for the ages, one that would be told and retold by their descendants for generations to come. A reminder that sometimes the most unlikely encounters lead to the most extraordinary love.